My name is Robert John Hutton, but I'm known as Robbo in the poetry world, and I'm from Fowlerville, Michigan. When I was hitchhiking around and I was doing street theater in New Orleans, I realized Robert John Hutton wouldn't work so good, and Bozo was already taken, so I just went for Robbo. I started out first as a short story writer, and then I realized I didn't have the gumption for that, and poetry seemed to be more close to what I wanted. One of the closest friends I ever had was Michael Elderkin, who also went to Grand Valley State Colleges back then, and he was big time into poetry. And I guess kind of I got into that with him, and a lot of it with Donna Monroe, one of my best friends. But at Grand Valley, we had a Studio 101 writers program. Since I worked at also the physical plant, Michael and I took over a little office space and we made ourselves a little writing program, which Donna Monroe was also involved. Coming back from Belize, Miguel and I decided to make a magazine, and we were going to call it Mota. And I think I know he killed himself February 19th, 1982. And so Donna and I decided to make a magazine that we ended up calling Neal Street Arts. And we spent a lot of time going to all these different businesses to get money to print this thing. We only made one copy, one issue. But from that, we heard about this other thing going on, which is called the Twilight Tribe. And that's when we got involved. It was the only thing going on in Grand Rapids that I knew about. Basically, they were just having meetings where people read their poetry at the beginning. And later on, we started making books, mags, and I was involved in one of the first issues of that. Twilight Tribe Spud, I did the cover for that, and we just did a lot of, I think I spent some time on 3 of their different issues. I can't remember them all. I mean, we're talking 40 years ago. One thing about the Twilight Tribe meetings, it was not about a workshop, but like trying to make each other's poetry sound better and work better. It was nothing like that. Some people mistakenly thought it was like that, but it was not about that. It was just a place where you just read your poetry, and people wouldn't, after you read your poetry, people wouldn't sit around like, oh, you could make this better. I like this and that. It wasn't like that at all. It was just reading your poetry. So we did some kind of fun things, reading in public, and it was fun, man. I did many shows at Gaia, and sometimes we read them on streets, even though we weren't welcome. I mean, seriously, there was nothing else going on in town that I knew of, except for the Twilight Tribe. Twilight Tribe had a meeting, but I went to the William James. William James had a meeting at the same time, not a meeting, but like a celebration of William James College. And I was going to go to, it was Nate Butler's apartment underneath Gaia. And I went there after my thing with William James, and there's police tape all around the building. And that's when I found out that some guy came into the poetry reading at Gaia and basically held hostage some of the members, and he shot Nate Butler in the head and pistol whipped my girlfriend at the time. And it was really crazy. I was trying to figure out what was going on. Poetry gets right to the point, gets right to the point. I call myself more of a garage station poet, as opposed to an academic poet, because I try to get, it's easy for me to write. Well, I write a lot. You know, I'm like that monkey with a typewriter. After 100 years, you can write something, you know? And that's probably the reason I'm prolific, because I'm trying to get to that part, to stop being a monkey and being a poet. I've done like 5 other chapbooks, much younger, you know? This was the more recent one that came out last year that my brother helped me put together. But yeah, I like it. It's mostly older poems, uh, but coming out with another chapbook pretty soon. And my brother and I were going to do some poetry readings in Washington State. And we did poetry readings in Anchorage before, and we did street performing plenty of times in many places, especially New Orleans. Yeah, I'm kind of happy about that book though, because you know the cover is such a pretty man. Well, that's me with the fingers. Underneath me is my brother, and next to him is his name is Morgan. He's my daughter's soon-to-be husband. She's the one on the lower, and on the up right-hand corner is my other daughter, Sequin. So Max Moonpenny is my daughter, and Sequin Iris is my daughter. This is taken in a circus shelter in Anchorage, Alaska. All these circus things are just around, yeah. When I was in high school, I had this art teacher, 2D art, who said, you know, to make it look interesting, you got to put details. Always have details, and that's what I do a lot to kind of make it more interesting. I come up with a kind of in a thought, you know, and then I go from there and I try to add details. There's a lot of like food references in my stuff, just because of details, and I know food. But yeah, empathetic. I appreciate that because that is true. Because I do love people. I start out with an idea, and it just grows from there. I have no idea how a poem's going to end. No idea. And just by the grace of whatever, man, it just comes out, you know. And putting details and stuff kind of makes it more alive for people because there's reference points, and I believe in reference points big time. I despise poetry which just talks about feelings without specific basis, specific starting and ending points, specific rocks along the path. You know, the details of stuff. I don't like poetry. I despise poetry, which is about like, which says nothing, but like how the person feels. I don't care about that. I don't care about how the person feels. I care about reference points so people can see, you know. Just like writing in general, you just don't talk about yourself. You have to have reference points, stones on the pathway. As an atheist, devout atheist, I'm on the path of God. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm creating stuff out of nothing. And that's what poets do. No matter how they write, they create something out of nothing. And I dig it. I mean, after I write a decent poem, I'm pretty damn happy. I'm happy for me, happy for anybody who reads it. I mean, to me, it's a religious experience. Write every day. Write. Use colors for expression. Use objects for expression. Uh, look at a doorknob. Think about how it smells. You know, look at your mom and see how she thinks underneath the grave. If she's still alive, or if she is dead, think about how she was alive. Uh, you can express the world in many ways, but you don't have to do it like historical books, history books. Like when I say Envelope. That can mean so many things. It can mean a pregnant person. You know, it could be a missing letter to somebody in Vietnam. It could be many different things. But yeah, write about colors that smell. Write about smells that sounds. Write about sounds that are things that have hurt your bones. You know, everything's a metaphor to another thing. It's how you open up yourself. And always write. The more you write, the better you'll get at it, and things will just happen magically. I do have an audience, a specific audience. Not that I'm trying to write to that audience, but I know like some poems hit people positively, and some poems hit other people positively, but not every poem works for everybody. But there's always, I guarantee you, there's always an audience for your poetry. Always an audience. There's always someone out there ready to hear those words. So this was last read in an audience where the audience started to read the words, "I suppose I must die," and pretty much all the audience got into it. All right. So the malcontent Espinard. The sun hurts my eyes. I suppose I must die. The children are righteous. I suppose I must die. This day no different than that day. I suppose I must die. This is when the audience starts knowing that they say, I suppose I must die. Sleep in the dark of night, I suppose I must die. Born naked, made up who I am, I suppose I must die. Work for the man, dream for the God, I suppose I must die. I drink this vodka and Gatorade, I suppose I must die. I'm supposed to die, but not tonight. I'm supposed to die, but not tonight. I'm supposed to die, but not tonight. When I wake up tomorrow, I will shake off my death. I will brush my teeth, and if I'm lucky, I will shit to death. I will walk to my car and start it up, shake off the death while I drive to work. I will shake off the death or the other people shaking off their death while they drive to work. I will be quick and alert. I will be exasperated and on the edge of life. Dodge the death of those dead men's cars. I will listen to the news on the AM radio, traffic on the 4s, sports on the 7s, local news on the 10s, national news on the half hours. I will listen to my chances. I suppose I must die. There's this man with Down syndrome who hitchhikes around the city corners of Anchorage, Alaska. He rocks from foot to foot. The government told him he could not solicit without a license. They told him he could not ask for money. He now has a sign that says, "Up to you, pay Floyd." I suppose I will carry small change from now on. I will not die tonight. This one's called The Four Parts of a Kiss. I used to work on boats in Alaska. So this is part of that experience. Four parts of a kiss. Number one, Diesel-powered pneumatic cleaver cut that dumb bum's thumb cleanly off. Fell onto the offal of fish heads and the violent back and forth of fish guts sliding from one bulkhead to another. Dead, cold fish innards up to our ankles, and the man wanted his thumb back. So we stopped the line and kicked around an intestine or two, looking at this greasy mass of pink burgundy, liver brown, floating factory of flesh. I was never so thirsty in my life. Butchering the silver moons of the sea, dreaming of chicken beaks, broken necks, the next coffee break. Looking at the beginning and the ending of the world every 18-hour shift. Counting porpoises on the horizon, breathing the leaking chlorine from broken refrigerators, needling that thumbless fool to give us a hand. But we did it. Found the errant thumb on a pile of fish roll. Put it in a Ziploc baggie, stuck it in the freezer. Wish the thumb good luck as the helicopter blades backsplash the smelly scales into our mouth and eyes. The fool and his parts lifting into the sky. Number 2. The sharks eating the spent carcasses. Every little salty thing will caress you. Number 3. I will kiss you on the mouth and I will guess the weight of your soul. Number 4. I will keep my hands to myself. It's what I believe in. You know, some people believe in Jesus Christ. Some people believe in Islam. I believe in the human city. The tale of the human city. Walking on the sidewalk of Robbo to St. Charles, there was this man on the balcony of the old slave quarters. He looked tired. His skin was pale. He wore a dirty t-shirt over his massive belly, and his legs shot from his boxers like lightning would if it was a limp jellyfish attracted to the dirt of fecundity. I saw him every day. I walked to the streetcar and felt great sadness for him. I knew he was hot. I knew he was tired. I knew he thought he was the center of the universe, and I knew he had not much hope for the next morning. His children were born in hangovers, and his wives were soiled rags. Of bad dreams. He stunk. 25 years later, I wake up in the cold rain of the Northwest, and spider bites cover my front and back like a blanket of bad discovery. And I pay $800 a month for the shack in the backyard of a crack maven with sores on her forehead the size of the white eyes of drunken tiger sharks. Water turned off. I piss in the yard of a man's picture window whose house cost $500,000. I gave up on putting my pants on. Every morning I vomit in the sink. Every evening I try to escape perspective. I miss New Orleans. She made me think it was all a dream. On a Robbo street, I walked by doomed men while I had the 17-year-old Virgin Mary in my apartment waiting for me to come back and give Jesus back to the earth. I'd go buy smokes at Walgreens and come back and wave to the man who thought he was the center of the universe. He'd give me the finger. I went home to finish making his grandkids. These days, I wake up in his apartment. But like after I wrote that, I had to look up the word fecundity. I didn't know if it was the correct one. See, this is the thing, man. I'm a voracious reader, or used to be. And so many words I didn't ever even know what they were about, but I thought just by context I might have a clue. But yeah, I don't know where I came up with that. Fecundity. I never heard that word before. that's how I write. My subconscious. You know, I guarantee you I'm not sober. Project Hope was I worked at the North Shore School District, just retired after working there for 22 years. And Project Hope was one of the places I worked at. It was it was for students who were disabled, usually intellectually disabled or behaviorally disabled, between 15 and 21 years old. But that was a great job. A lot of my students were possibly going to jail or have come from jail. None of the other programs in this North Shore School District, maybe there's 30,000 students and teachers there that they could fit into. And so I was able to, well, it's great. I taught poetry classes, contemporary issues where I bring out the newspaper and you know, have them like look at the newspaper, see if they can find something interesting, and I ask them about it. But it was a school program where there's the least amount of structures for these guys, and I'm still friends with a lot of them. But yeah, but after that, I worked for as a job coach and a travel trainer, taking disabled students to different internships, different jobs. And that was kind of cool because I didn't attend classes. We just took students and taught them how to be street safe and how to use buses and do internships at different job sites. That's kind of fun. But yeah, I enjoyed these jobs because you don't work during the summer. Yeah, baby. I hitchhiked all over North America, so to speak, Central America. I kind of figured out I probably hitchhiked at least 40,000 miles. You know, starting when I was 17, and I kind of felt that was my church because you'd sit out there and just wait and wait and wait and wait, and you didn't know if you're going to get picked up in an hour, a day, or 3 days. But you just sort of said, okay, whatever happens, happens. And I really enjoyed that. And then you get into a vehicle with somebody and you're like 3 feet away from them and you're learning whole new different people and what they think about and how they are, you know. I've had guns pulled on me. I've had a lot of people who wanted to have sex with me. I didn't, but I didn't want to have sex with them. But it was a whole new adventure. I met people straight up, completely different. That's the human city. Hitchhiking around and meeting people in a 4-foot width car or 5-foot width, whatever car it is, you know. And I love that. That was my church. You know, as patient as all hell. I didn't care. Anything could happen, but I was just ready for it. And I did that for, like I said, 40,000 miles. That sort of helped guide me who I am today and how I write poetry and why I use the word human city. Because I met the humans in their city. Just saying. When I did my classes with my students, you know, I was in a closed door, maybe like 10, 11 students at a time, whoever elected to do that elective. I told them right off, I don't care what you say. I don't care if you say fuck, cunt, whatever. Just I want you to write. And and the way I believe in teaching things is just I'll give them positive thoughts. I wasn't going to like get them constructive criticism. That's bullshit as far as I believe, right? But you can see how it empowered the students. Like, wait a minute, I can do something just with what I brought into this life, with the words I say, with the feelings I have. And it made them prouder, you know? You gave them like they accomplished something. And they didn't have to do anything except talk, express themselves. And that was great. You know, I gave them freedom. They got freedom, like, and that sort of helped them grow because it empowered them. And that was kind of nice. I enjoyed that.